Samantha looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, noticing the fine lines that had started to appear around her eyes at 38. She felt a growing sense of discontent. She sighed, applying a layer of concealer to cover the dark circles under her eyes, evidence of another restless night. As she stepped out of the bathroom, her gaze fell on Tom, her husband of 15 years, sprawled on the couch with eyes glued to his laptop. He barely looked up as she entered the living room. "Hey, Samantha," her voice tinged with a hint of irritation. "I was thinking we could go out for dinner tonight, maybe try that. New Italian place downtown." Tom glanced up, expression neutral. "I've got a lot of work to finish. Can we do it another time?" Samantha felt a familiar pang of disappointment. "Sure," she said, forcing a smile. "Another time." She retreated to the kitchen, busy herself with making coffee as the machine started up. Her mind wandered to the early days of their marriage, spontaneous dates, passionate nights, a sense of adventure that had once defined their relationship. Now it felt like they were merely coexisting as two strangers sharing a living space. The next day, Samantha met her best friend, Lisa, at their favorite cafe. Samantha settled into a corner booth and couldn't help but notice the vibrant energy radiating from Lisa. She seemed more alive than ever, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Spill it," Lisa said, leaning forward. "What's got you looking like someone stole your puppy?" Samantha sighed, stirring her latte absently. "It's Tom, it's everything. I just feel so stuck, like our marriage has become this stag pond and I'm drowning in it." Lisa's eyebrows shot up. "Honey, you're too young and too hot to be feeling this way. What you need is a little excitement and a reminder of who you are outside of being Tom's wife." "How exactly am I supposed to do that?" "I suppose I should do that," Samantha replied with a hint of sarcasm in her voice. Lisa's lips curled into a smile. "Have you ever considered opening up your marriage?" Samantha nearly choked on her coffee. "What? You're not serious." "I'm serious," Lisa replied. "Think about it. You get to explore, feel desired again, maybe. It could even make Tom realize what he's been taking for granted. It's not cheating if you both agree to it." Samantha shook her head, but she couldn't deny the tiny spark of intrigue that Lisa's words had ignited. "I don't know, Lisa. It seems like a recipe for disaster, or it could be exactly what you need to save your marriage." Lisa replied, "Sam, I've been there. My marriage was on the rocks until we decided to spice things up. Now we're happier than ever." As they continued to talk, Lisa painted a seductive picture of sexual liberation and renewed passion. By the time they left the cafe, the seed of temptation had been firmly planted. Over the next few days, Samantha found herself thinking about the idea of feeling young and desirable again with men hanging on her every word. In her fantasies, Tom would suddenly realize what he had been neglecting and fight to win her back one evening. As they sat in silence, Samantha decided to bring up the subject of Tom at the dinner table. She began, feeling a rush of excitement. "I've been thinking a lot about our relationship lately." Tom looked up from his plate, his expression guarded. Samantha took a deep breath. "I think we should consider opening up our marriage." The words hung in the air. Tom's fork was silent as he set his plate down, his face a mask of shock and hurt. "What are you talking about, Sam?" he asked, his voice low and controlled. Samantha rushed to explain her words, tumbling out in a nervous stream. "It's not that I don't love you, I do, but I think we've lost something. And maybe this could help us find it again. It's about exploring and growing as individuals. I read that it can actually strengthen relationships." Tom's jaw clenched. "So, you want to sleep with other men? Is that what you're saying? It's not just about sex," Samantha argued, though a part of her knew that wasn't entirely true. "It's about feeling alive again, rediscovering ourselves. Don't you want that for us?" Tom stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I can't believe you're suggesting this. Our marriage isn't some experiment. I thought he'd be more open to the idea, but he was really negative. Over the next few weeks, I kept at it. I left articles about open marriages on Tom's nightstand, talked about how it could improve their relationship, and even suggested they see a couples therapist to discuss it. Tom's resistance began to wear down under the constant pressure of one night after another of heated arguments. He finally relented, saying, "Fine, if this is what you think will make you happy, then do it, but don't expect me to be okay with it." Samantha felt a rush of excitement mixed with she felt a twinge of guilt and reached out to touch Tom's arm, but he flinched away. "Thank you," she said softly. "You'll see this will be good for us." Tom's eyes met hers, and for a moment Samantha saw a depth of pain that made her heart ache. but the allure of adventure and the promise of reclaiming her youth overshadowed it. The next day, Samantha created a profile on a dating app. Her hands were shaking with nervous energy, but within hours her inbox was flooded with messages from interested men. She felt a rush of power and desirability that she hadn't experienced in years. After careful consideration, she chose to meet up with Samantha's date was Alex. He was charming, successful, and most importantly, he understood the boundaries of her open marriage. On the night of the date, Samantha spent hours getting ready, applying her lipstick. She caught sight of Tom watching her from the doorway. His expression was unreadable. "You look nice," he said. Samantha felt a pang of guilt as she heard Tom's flat voice say, "Thanks, I won't be out late." Tom nodded and retreated to his study without another word. The date with Alex was everything Samantha had hoped for. He was attentive, flirtatious, and made her feel like the most desirable woman in the room. When he leaned in to kiss her, by the end of the night, Samantha didn't hesitate. One date turned into several, and before she knew it, she was deeply entangled in her affair with Alex. The excitement of sneaking around and the thrill of new experiences was intoxicating. She convinced herself that this was exactly what she needed and that it would ultimately, she thought she'd saved her marriage. But it came crashing down one afternoon when Samantha received a call from her doctor. The routine checkup sheet from the week before had revealed something unexpected. She'd contracted an STD. Samantha sat in her car parked outside the clinic, her mind reeling. How could she have been so careless? The seriousness of what she had done hit her like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about her anymore. She had potentially put Tom at risk as well. As she drove home, her hands shaking on the steering wheel, Samantha realized the full extent of her actions. She had opened Pandora's box and now she had no idea how to close it. She went to close it, but when she walked into their house, she found Tom in the kitchen preparing dinner. The sight of him so unaware of the bombshell she was about to drop made her heart ache. She said, "Tom, we need to talk." He turned to face her, and for the first time in months, Samantha truly saw him. The lines of stress on his face where she could see the pain in his eyes as she opened her mouth to confess. She couldn't tell him. She couldn't destroy what little was left of their marriage in that moment of hesitation. She made a decision that would set in motion a chain of events she could never have anticipated. She never could have imagined what was to come. She decided to keep her diagnosis a secret, thinking she could handle it on her own. But she was wrong. Tom had his own secrets, and so Samantha had to face her guilt and fear. Meanwhile, Tom was making plans of his own, plans that would turn their world upside down. Samantha was waiting for Tom to come back from work. She was pacing the living room, her heart pounding. She was feeling guilty and afraid. She had spent the past week in a haze of guilt and fear, knowing that her reckless actions had not only did it put her health at risk, but it could also affect her job. When she heard the keys in the lock, she froze. Tom walked in looking indifferent. He nodded at her and said, "Tom, Samantha, we need to talk." He paused, turned to face her, and raised an eyebrow. "About what?" Samantha took a deep breath and collected herself. She began to speak, but Tom's jaw clenched and he said nothing, waiting for her to continue. "I made a mistake," she began. Her words came out in a rush. "This whole open marriage thing was a terrible idea. I want us to go back to how we were." Tom's laugh was cold and devoid of humor. "How we were, and how exactly was that, Samantha? From where I'm standing, our marriage has been a lie for a long time." His words hit her like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Tom said, his voice low and controlled, "that I know about the STD." The blood drained from Samantha's face. "How? Did you do it? Does it matter?" Tom cut her off. "What matters is that you've been lying to me again." Samantha felt the room spin. "Tom, I can explain. Save it." He snapped, "I'm done with your explanations, your excuses, your manipulations. This open marriage was never about us. It was about you being selfish and wanting to." Samantha's eyes filled with tears as she realized that she couldn't cheat without feeling guilty. She loved Tom and thought that they needed something to bring them closer. Tom's laugh was bitter. He thought that they needed to be closer by sleeping with other men, by lying to her, and by risking her health. "Samantha, this ends now." He walked to the desk in the corner of the room and pulled out a thick envelope. He had filed for divorce. Samantha felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. "Divorce. No. Please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can do this." Savings Tom's eyes flashed. "This is our money. I earned it while you were out finding yourself. Samantha, you don't get to play the victim. He's here. I'm not playing anything," Samantha shouted. "You agreed to the open marriage. You can't just end everything without trying to fix it. Tom's voice was ice cold. I agreed. You manipulated me and pushed until I gave in so you could justify your affair. Well, guess what? I'm done being your doormat. He turned to leave, but Samantha grabbed his arm. Tom, please. I love you. We can get past this. For a moment, something flickered in Tom's eyes. It was a hint of the man she had married, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by a steely resolve. We can't resolve this, he said gently but firmly, removing her hand. Goodbye, Samantha. He walked out, leaving her standing alone in the wreckage of her marriage. The next few weeks passed in a blur of lawyer meetings and heated arguments. She watched helplessly as her life unraveled around her. She tried repeatedly to reach out to Tom to explain and beg. Samantha tried to get Tom to give her another chance, but he was unmovable and silent. One afternoon, Samantha met with Lisa at their usual cafe. She was desperate for a sympathetic ear. I can't believe he's doing this, Samantha said, her voice hoarse from crying. He's turned into someone I don't even recognize. Lisa sipped her coffee, her expression uncomfortable. Samantha, I hate to say this, but maybe. Samantha stared at her friend in disbelief. What? You're the one who suggested the open marriage in the first place. I know, Lisa said, holding up her hands. I'm sorry about that, but Sam, you have to admit things got way out of hand. The lying, the STD, that's not what an open marriage is supposed to be about. So you're taking a side? I thought you were my friend. Let's put the past behind us. You messed up, Sam. Now you have to face the consequences. Samantha stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't need this. I don't need you judging me too. She stormed out of the cafe, ignoring Lisa's calls behind her. She walked down the street, feeling more alone than ever. The final blow came a week later when Samantha received a call from her lawyer. Tom had not only secured a favorable divorce settlement, but also managed to keep the majority of their shared assets. How is this possible? Samantha demanded, her voice shaking with anger. He can't just take everything. Her lawyer spoke in a sympathetic but firm tone. I'm sorry, Mrs. Parker, but Mr. Parker's legal team presented a very strong case given the circumstances of your indiscretions and the potential health risks you expose. The judge ruled in his favor on most counts. Samantha felt the last vestiges of her world crumbling around her. She had lost everything, her husband. That night, as she sat alone in the empty house that had once been their home, Samantha scrolled through her phone, looking at old pictures of her and Tom, happy, smiling, in love. How had it all gone so wrong? A notification popped up on her phone, a social media update from a mutual friend. Samantha's finger hovered over it for a moment before tapping. Samantha's throat tightened as she saw the image of Tom at a company event. He looked more handsome and confident than she had seen him in years, with a stunning brunette beside him, her hand on his arm. Both of them were laughing at some shared joke. Jealousy and regret surged through Samantha. This was supposed to be you, basking in Tom's success. You pushed him away. Samantha was left with a lot of thoughts racing through her mind. She had been trying to make it work with Tom, but it seemed like he had moved on so quickly. It was like he had cut her out of his life as if she meant nothing to him. Well, she could play that game too. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. Hi, Lisa, it's me, Sam. I need your help. Lisa's voice was cautious. Are you okay? Samantha's laugh was brittle. No, I'm not okay, but I'm going to be okay. Tom thinks he can just walk away and leave me with nothing. He's got another thing coming. What are you talking about? Samantha Parker said her voice was hard and controlled. She went on to describe the manipulative man behind the perfect facade as that and asked if she could help. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Samantha knew what kind of man he really was, even if she had to be honest to do it. She began crafting her story, twisting facts and exaggerating events. Samantha felt a perverse sense of satisfaction. She had lost everything, but she would make sure Tom didn't get away with it. She was unaware that her quest for revenge would lead her down a path of self-destruction. Samantha sat at her kitchen table surrounded by scribbled notes and crumpled papers. Her eyes were rimmed with dark circles as she looked between her laptop screen and her phone. She had spent the last week crafting her narrative, carefully selecting which truths to twist and which lies to tell. The cursor blinked on the empty social media post, taunting her with a deep breath, and she began to type. I've stayed silent for too long. It's time everyone knew. Samantha typed the truth about Tom Parker with her fingers flying across the keyboard. She wrote a long post about emotional manipulation and control, painting Tom as a monster and conveniently omitting her own role in their marriage's demise. As she hovered over the post button, her phone buzzed. It was Lisa on the phone. "Sam, don't do it!" Lisa's voice crackled through the speaker. "This isn't the way!" Samantha's jaw clenched. "You don't get to tell me what to do anymore." "Lisa, you made your choice when you sided with him." "I'm not siding with anyone," Lisa protested. "I'm trying to stop you from making a huge mistake. The only mistake I made was not seeing Tom for who he really was." "Sooner or later," Samantha spat. Lisa's sigh was heavy with frustration. "Sam, please think about what you're doing. Once you put this out there, you can't take it back." "Good," Samantha said, her voice cold. "I don't want to take it back. I want everyone to know exactly what kind of man Tom Parker is and what kind of woman will this make you." Lisa asked quietly, but Samantha had already ended the call without allowing her to reply. She was flooded with comments and messages, a mix of shock, sympathy, and skepticism. Samantha felt vindicated as she watched her words spread like wildfire across their social circle. However, the high was short-lived. Within hours, cracks began to appear in her carefully constructed narrative. Her phone rang again. It was Mark, a mutual friend of hers and Tom's. Samantha's voice was a mixture of confusion and anger. Samantha started to explain what had happened, but Mark interrupted her. He said, "Wait a minute. You're saying Tom forced you into an open marriage, which is not what you told me a few months ago. You said it was your idea." Samantha felt a bit panicky. She said, "I was covering for him. He made me say that." Mark was very skeptical. He said, "This doesn't sound like Tom at all." As the conversation continued, Samantha was caught out by Mark's questions, which exposed inconsistencies in her story. EXP highlighted these inconsistencies, which Samantha had hoped no one would notice by the time she hung up. Samantha's confidence had crumbled. She refreshed her social media feed and saw the tide of public opinion turning against her. Initially, her comments had been supportive, but now they were being questioned. Even her friends, who had rushed to offer comfort, were expressing doubt. Worst of all, people were starting to share their own stories. That painted a very different picture of Tom. "He helped me through my divorce and was nothing but supportive. I've worked with Tom for years and he's always been respectful and kind." Samantha suggested opening their marriage, which I thought was a bad idea. "I remember her bragging about it at book club as the day wore on." Samantha watched helplessly as her plan backfired spectacularly. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends and acquaintances, some expressing concern for her mental state and others calling her out for her actions. That evening, she was a mess. She paced her apartment, alternating between angry denial and crushing guilt. How had it all gone so wrong? She was startled by a knock at the door. When she opened it, she saw Lisa standing there. Lisa's expression was a mix of concern and disappointment. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. Samantha nodded mutely. Stepping aside to let her friend enter, Lisa looked around the messy apartment, taking in the empty wine bottles and scattered papers. "Oh, Sam," she said, sighing. "What have you done?" Gently placing a hand on her arm, Lisa said, "I know, Sam, but this isn't the way to go about it. You're only hurting yourself more." Samantha's eyes welled up with tears. "What am I supposed to do now? Everyone hates me, not everyone." "You need to make this right. You need to tell the truth," Lisa said firmly. Samantha shook her head vehemently. "I can't. If I admit I lied, I'll lose everything." Lisa's voice was gentle but firm. "Sam, look around. What exactly do you think you have left to lose?" The words hit Samantha like a physical blow. She looked at her friend and saw the truth she had been avoiding. She had already lost everything: her marriage, her reputation, her self-respect. Show her some respect. The idea of revenge had been the final straw in her old life. She picked up her phone and started typing a new post. "I owe everyone an apology. What I said about Tom Parker was not true," she confessed to her lies and manipulation. She felt a strange mix of relief and despair. She was burning the last bridges she had, but at least she was finally telling the truth. The responses were swift and brutal. A friend she had known for years blocked her. Acquaintances publicly denounced her. Even those who had initially supported her now turned their backs, disgusted by her deception. In the days that followed, Samantha's world shrank to the confines of her apartment. She ignored calls from her lawyer, deleted her social media accounts, and avoided looking at the local news, where her story had become the latest scandal. One afternoon, as she listlessly scrolled through job listings on her laptop, her phone buzzed with a text. It was from Tom, the first direct message from him in weeks. "Let's talk. Meet me at the park in an hour." Samantha's heart raced as she read the message. Was this her chance to make things right, to explain, to apologize and salvage something from the wreckage of their relationship? An hour later, she sat on a bench in the park, her hands twisting nervously in her lap, and saw Tom approaching. His face was unreadable. "Tom," she began as he sat down, keeping a careful distance between them. "I'm so sorry." "For everything I never meant, stop," Tom said, his voice firm but not unkind. "I'm not here for apologies, Samantha. I'm here to tell you to stop." Samantha blinked in confusion. "Stop what this? The posts, the lies, the attempts to contact my family and colleagues. It needs to end, but I already took down the post," Samantha protested. "I admitted I lied." Tom's laugh was short and humorless. "You think that fixes everything? Samantha, do you have any idea what you've done? The damage." Samantha felt tears pricking at her eyes. "I know I messed up. I just wanted you to feel as bad as I did." "How did that work out for you?" Tom asked, his voice cold. Samantha looked down at her hands. "I've lost everything. You threw everything away. Now you move on. I've asked my lawyer to draw up a final settlement. Once you sign it, that's it. We're done." Samantha's voice cracked after 15 years. "We just over." Tom's eyes met hers, and for a moment, Samantha saw a flicker of the man she had married, the man she had hurt so deeply. "We've been over this for a long time, Samantha," he said softly. "You just didn't want to see it." He turned and walked away, leaving Samantha alone on the bench in the weeks that followed. She went through the motions of rebuilding her life. She signed the divorce papers, found a small apartment across town, and took a job that was far below her qualifications. One evening, as she sat alone in her new apartment, she opened her laptop and found herself on Tom's social media page. She hadn't looked at it since that day in the park. She was too afraid of what she might see. The first post that popped up made her heart stop. It was a picture of Tom smiling broadly. Samantha had seen the brunette before. The caption read, "Excited for this new chapter." She stared at the image, taking in Tom's genuine happiness and the easy affection between him and the woman. This was what she had wanted. She'd wanted to see Tom move on and prove that he needed her. But as she looked at the joy in Tom's eyes, she hadn't seen in years. Samantha felt the full weight of her actions crash down upon her. She had destroyed her marriage, her reputation, and her self-respect. She'd tried to punish Tom for her own unhappiness by disrespecting him. But now she sat alone in her empty apartment, scrolling through images of the life she could have had. Samantha finally understood the true cost of her revenge. She'd tried to ruin Tom's life, but in the end, she'd ruined her own. With a heavy heart, she closed the laptop and looked around at the bare walls of her new apartment and the boxes she still hadn't unpacked. She'd unpacked. And this was her life now, a life she'd chosen through her own actions. As she curled up on her second-hand couch, Samantha faced the harsh truth she'd been avoiding for so long. There was no one left to blame but herself. As the reality of her situation sank in, she realized that the path to redemption, if there was one, would be long and lonely. The story of Samantha and Tom was over, but the consequences of their choices would echo for years to come.